welcome. Today I'm going to talk about the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, and yeah, it's the second video this week I've done about Tobey Maguire's lead. It was a net coincidence, really. So I watched these films this week again. I haven't watched them for years. I mean, I'd watched Ride with the Devil like 3 or 4 weeks ago, so it's like I'm doing videos, but I didn't watch them close together. But I had not watched these films in years. I saw them come out. I'm a big Sam Raimi fan. I've watched them on DVD, watched them Blu-ray, but we've had this a lot of superhero movies. Some good, some bad. But at a certain point, you kind of get sick of watching them, so you end up thinking, I'm not going to watch this for a while. And I'd seen them enough at that point anyway, so it was like, I just gave them a rest for a little bit. But I finally come back to watch them. I felt like watching them. And it was a very nice surprise, because ultimately it was like, it reaffirmed what I thought was these are some of the best superhero films series. Even the third one has its charms. It has problems, but when I rewatched it, it was like, this is a lot better than its reputation. It's got flaws, it's got plenty of flaws, but it's not as bad as its reputation suggests. And it is. And the thing about these films, all three films, is they are wonderfully sincere, eccentric, funny, strange films. They're all over the place, but that's what makes them charming. I always think these films are what the Richard Donner Superman film wanted to be, but never quite managed, because that film wanted to be sincere and silly at the same time, but I always thought that it didn't balance it out really well, and especially the last third of it. It just felt like you had the right actor, but the comedy stuff and the plot stuff wasn't as good. In the Raimi films, I think, best when you get the second one, everything's in cohesion, everything works together really well, and they know what they're doing, and the mix of the silly and the sincere just really works with this series. Which is, I think that's why it's still well remembered. I mean, there's a reason when Tobey Maguire came back and Spider-Man No Way Home, that was a big reaction. You know, I mean, Andrew Garfield coming back in Spider-Man, it was nice, but even he would play, but they were really there for Tobey Maguire outside of the actual film with Tom Holland. That was the impact one, because Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker Spider-Man does have a nostalgia thing now. That the same with Michael Keaton coming back as Batman, there is a nostalgia there that's it's just there. These were iconic versions of these characters. They had like definite films in the in the series of these characters who have continued on. These were definite versions of them. So it's like there is a nostalgia there for those interpretations of the characters. So you kind of even if you think the films are flawed, there is something in the way they did those films that stand out. Because when the films come out, I remember them being well liked, but they were criticised as being a bit too cheesy, intentionally cheesy, not at hip. Because they weren't hip. Sam Raimi is not hip. He never does hip stuff. That's not his reason for being in the world. To be hip. Which came really important in the third one. But yeah, but over time, the sincerity of them, I think, really is the thing that lasts. And all the kind of thing of, they're not that hip. When you compare them to what Marvel did after it, because Marvel, this series ended in 2007 and Iron Man started in 2008, which became a much hipper, more sarcastic world. Which means these ones suddenly look much more sincere and more refreshing. They're just very refreshing films, because they know exactly what they are. I mean, Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker, he is a nerd throughout all three films. They never take that away. Some people are annoyed that he was too nerdy, that he wasn't a smart ass, the way they wanted Peter Parker to be a smart ass. This is an interpretation of Spider-Man. There were other ones. You've got the most smart-ass version of Andrew Garfield, which didn't really land as well until we got to No Way Home, where it landed a lot better. And then you've also, when they actually had to give him some gravitas. and also Tom Holland's more youthful Peter Parker, who's much more gee whiz, sincere, you know, naive in a different way, but not nerdy in the same way that Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker was. So you get this sense of differences. But one of the nice things about these films is they are sincere, the sincerity really just comes through. An interesting thing is what initially was the weak point of the first film, which was the fact that you spend like half the film doing the origin story, and then you do another plot with the Green Goblin. Now works really well. It's just a sense of it's an old-fashioned technique, but it works in this film because it's like it is part of the origin thing, and it brings back to Spiderman again, where he becomes this character, the iconic character, and then he faces his big supervillain for the first time, and that's the test. That's his first big test, and that's the story ultimately. So it does feel like one story, really, even though it could be a little bit clunky here or there. But nowadays, when you look at it, it actually works really well because it is basically you see Peter Parker. He gets bit by the spider like really early, like very early. You get to know him like for a few minutes before he gets bit, and then he is dealing with the ramifications of that. And you get to see him grow up through the time. Now, Tobey Maguire at this point was in his mid-20s, playing someone who's 18. He was just in the borderline of the sense of is like, you know he's not that age, but it's acceptable in the film. Because you couldn't get someone that age to act the part well enough. Once in a while, you get actors who are very young who can do really well, but most of the time it doesn't work. So he's playing Peter Parker, and you've got Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson, and they're the two leads for the films. You've also got James Franco as Harry Osborn, who's the third lead, who floats through. And he works a lot better now rewatching it than he did at the time. When it came out, that plot was the kind of thing that was always a bit clunky, and now it's like you look at it, it's like, it's fine. I think it was just the Franco thing, or if he was everywhere at the time and he's getting a bit annoying. And now he's been cancelled. You don't see him as much. I was like, that's fine now. I don't have to be annoyed by him being in everything at the moment, so I can just enjoy the character. I think there's a bit of that there. So you get to see Peter Parker as a nerd. So even when he's learning his powers, he's still a nerd. You still get the sense of who he is as a nerd. He still reacts in silly ways. And he gives odd looks and he's awkward. And you tell Raimi really pushed him for this. And you tell Maguire's enjoying it as well. It's like the sense of he's enjoying playing this kind of weird nerd guy who's not pathetic. He's just into what he's into. And he's insecure, but he's not like pathetic in any way, which is the problem with nerd characters sometimes. They either push them too much into like they're smart asses who think they're above everybody, or they're just too weird. This one, no, he's just someone who's come into himself. He's working it out. And that's what works. And there's also enough darkness within Maguire as an actor that, well, you get hints of that as well, that balances everything out so he's not just one note. So when he fights bullies and things, there is a sense of he has to pull back a little bit and he has to learn to pull back. So you get a more dimensional character rather than just a smarter Spider-Man. He's just a guy who's been given these powers and he's trying to learn how to deal with them. Which is the problem with some superhero films when the person gets the powers, if they're not defined before that well enough, you've got an emotional distance. If you don't really know who they are before they get the powers, it's weird. Like, I know when I saw Captain Marvel, it was like it started with her with the powers, then you did the flashbacks to her getting the powers, and it's like you never get the time to learn the person behind the character before we went into that superhero stuff, and it made a distant effect to the character. So anyway, so you get the films following this guy through his life as he learns to deal with these powers. The first film is about him dealing with Green Goblin, dealing with a guy who's got malicious and vicious and will attack his family. And how do you deal with a guy like that? And why do you keep your identity secret from people? Because you don't want to give your enemies a way in to actually attack you and hurt you. So it's a slow build up of why he does everything, who he is, why he does things, how he learns through painful experience, that you don't tell people who you are, how you don't you try and make sure that none of your loved ones are involved in anything dangerous. And it's that thing he's learned through that film. I mean, obviously Willem Dafoe as a Green Goblin, but that also helps. I mean, it used to be people were really mad that his Green Goblin didn't have the Green Goblin mask. Instead, it was a Power Ranger mask. But nowadays, there's been so many variations of characters. It's like, who cares? It's just a variation. It's just a version of the character. When it first came out, it was like, will we ever see a proper Green Goblin? Now it's like, yeah, eventually. Just give it time. I'm sure Marvel are cooking that up just now. A version of Green Goblin that's more comics accurate. But the Goblin character is great with Willem Dafoe, who does not need a mask to look weird. Let's face it. He can look weird without a mask, so it doesn't matter, ultimately. It's just that's the way, you know, it's just this, he can go from being innocent to creepy within a second without cutting. So, simple. How a good actor is a simple way to do it. In the second one, you have Doc Ock, played by Alfred Molina, who's a much more complicated villain in the sense he's sympathetic. His actual ideal is to create an energy source that will help cheap energy, and he's actually trying to do something good. But he's got like these like, machines to help him do things, which are the arms that are actually will become melded to his spine, and he's affected by them when the safety thing gets destroyed during an accident, and the AI in that is affecting his mind, which makes him go bad. But you never lose it because he was introduced so sympathetically. You never lose the sense of there's a good man in here still, and that becomes a problem for the Peter Parker character ultimately. In the sense of he knows this is a good man who's been destroyed by what's going on. It's not like he's an evil man, so he's fighting something that's more complicated. It's not someone who tried to kill him. Ultimately, he just wants him to stay out of his way. I mean, he feels he has to stop Doc Ock from doing this because he knows that the experiment he's going to do doesn't work and it'll cause more chaos. And he's trying to stop him, but these things will not let Doc Ock accept that. Because it was his dream, he feels he needs to keep going. Plus Doc Ock's wife died during the experiment, and he feels he needs to make it work to prove himself and his mind to her. She died. So there's a lot going on with Doc Ock that is played sympathetically and played throughout the film slowly but surely, so it gives it a real sense of pace. So again, wonderfully done. The romance with Mary Jane and Peter kind of comes and goes throughout the film because it's much more like she knows something's up. Like he keeps them going back and forward. She's met someone else and she's doing someone else. And throughout the film, but she knows something, like he's rejected her, but she knows something's up with him. And she's still trying to figure out what it is. And he's trying to actually figure out how to balance his life. Like be Spider-Man, be a student, be good to his friends. And he's doing bad with everybody because he's always missing the points with his friends. He's missing the school a lot of the time. He's trying work for a living, shooting shots of Spider-Man to try and make a living. And he's just dragged in and he's exhausted and he's starting to lose powers because his mind's everywhere. And slowly his world falls apart. But what's great about the film is, even amidst this depression he's dealing with, there's still some great action scenes. The film balances this out perfectly. Like you get a great action scene and then something horrible happens to him. So you never feel like the sense of this is difficult for him. You're with the character as all these horrible things happen to him. But you're not. The film's not depressing because you have action scenes, you have jokes, you have moments that are funny that balance it out. So by the time you get to the ending, you've built up so much goodwill to the character, and you've built up so much stuff he's gone through. But there is a release at the ending where he actually gets a girl, ultimately, after 2 films, and he managed to resolve what's troubling him. Like, he can't be with his friends, and he can't. He's been torn apart, and slowly, surely, it all kind of comes together by the end, and he starts to actually find a way to balance everything out. So it feels like he's earned his stripes. So the first 2 films ultimately feel like one long story, with a separation of like 6 months between them. Really, it feels like by the end of the second film, you've got to the end of that story, like the origins, defeating the first villain, dealing with his girlfriend he loves but he can't announce himself to, and eventually her figuring it out. So it feels like one long story ultimately, and it's very satisfying. So of course they can't leave it alone because these are 2 big hits, so they needed another 3rd film. And Sam Raimi was interested in still doing a 3rd film. And the goodwill was really there at the time the 2nd film had come out, because it was like, it taken what was a good first film and really expanded, because some people thought the first film was too goofy, loved the second one. It was like, second one really delivered, and it did feel like this was now, the first film looked better in retrospect for the second film as well, so it felt like one big film that really delivered, ultimately, and told a satisfying story. So we got to the 3rd one, and it was like, because the first 2 films are done really quickly together, because one was 2002, one was 2004. It was a massive run. And then they took a little break, and then come back to the 3rd one. And at this point, the second one, Raimi, because he'd loved to hit the first one, was allowed to do what he wanted. The 3rd one, they wanted certain things done with Spider-Man, because superheroes were now becoming a big thing. Marvel was about to start doing their own films. Fox had done Fantastic Four and X-Men. There were a bunch of films like Ghost Rider had come out and Daredevil, so this was a big thing now. Superheroes had arrived, and Spider-Man was a big one. And they were going to restart Batman over DC, and we're going to just restart Superman. So it was like, we need to compete with all these films. In a way that when the second film came out, it was just competing with X-Men, ultimately, and maybe Daredevil was coming out. But they didn't feel that there was a glut. They felt there was a bunch of them, but there wasn't like a glut of them. Other ones were coming down the line, but it was like massive. There were other films coming out at the same time that were successful, you know. So this 3rd one, they said put Venom in the film, even though Raimi was never a Venom fan. So he had to put Venom in the film. Then they also, Raimi wanted to do, basically finish off the story with Harry Osborn, who had discovered that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, and he thinks he's killed his father. So he wanted to do something with that, and the mind games between those 2. He wanted to do something with Sandman, who was a tragic character like Doc Ock, and basically have those 2 plots work together. And again, keep it sincere, and also do like a darker 3rd film where Parker has to discover his dark side a little bit more and deal with his flaws. And basically get a sense of, if they just let him be and do his thing. I mean, he did that amnesia thing, which at the time caused backlash. But when you look at it now, it's like, yeah, it only really lasted like 20 minutes, the amnesia. And it was just a way to bring the character back to a point so you could then round it up again. You're feeling that if they had time to do that, like, without all these other plots going on, probably been fine. Because the first 2 films had melodramatic stuff in them that worked out fine, because they had time to set it up and they had time to deliver it. And this film feels like there's tons of stuff going on, and you always have to add something else. So the film had too many villains, and you didn't have a chance to breathe with any of the plots. So even though Sandman plot starts out quick and there's some great stuff, and then Sandman disappears for like 40 minutes. And then he comes back for the finale. and that it feels like, yeah, there's a nice ending to the end of it, but it feels like it was a bit rushed. The Harry Osborn stuff feels a bit rushed because there's some good stuff where Peter Parker has to fight him and he's destroyed Peter's life and all that stuff. You really feel that should have been a bit longer, and you can see the reactions of both those characters genuinely, you know, and it probably worked at the time. As I said before, they had melodramatic stuff in the first and second ones, and it was done sincerely and it worked. And there was that issue. But Venom put it in basically meant that we need another plot they had to service. And the better part of the film, and Venom's very light in the film. Venom's there, but he's very light. And the Venom scenes actually are okay. I mean, Parker's trying to deal with the black suit and increased stuff. There's some nice stuff there. But it also leads to the very Raimi stuff that the audience did not like, which on rewatch I really liked. I always liked it anyway, but rewatch is like, yeah, this is really funny. Peter Parker has to deal with the dark side of himself, but it's not the dark side of like angsty teen, violence. It's that dark side of a geek who's out for revenge because he's been hurt, but he's also can't stop being a geek. And his idea of cool is not cool, and his idea of looking cool is just ridiculous. Just the way they set a character up in the first two films, he's a geek, he's a nerd, he does not understand cool. So they expand it, and it really annoyed people because it went too far into Peter Parker's a nerd. I think it's hilarious. There's the nightclub scene, musical sequence that when he's jumping and dancing all over the place, that's hilarious and very Sam Raimi. And it's kind of, but again, it's like, if they had more time in the film, they could have built to all this stuff a bit more than to do with Venom. Venom's the thing that's the problem. I mean, they have a subplot that's done really fast by Eddie Brock, played by Topher Grace, who is the competitor for Peter Parker. He's the dark side of Peter Parker. He cheats to get someplace easy. He does all these awful things to try and impress people. And he's a total sociopath. And you don't really like him that much. You're not really meant to, but it's done so fast you can't really get a human connection to him. And that's the big problem in this film, is everything's moving so fast that the human connection for certain things isn't built up enough. It's just like, this next plot point. And you have to fit this all in 2 hours, and suddenly, an hour and a half in, you have to get to the conclusion. And the conclusion is the biggest damn squid in the film, in the sense of, it's another hype spot, another fight with all the villains. Everyone comes together to fight the villains. Like, Harry turns into a good guy. It's fine, but it feels like it's even the film leading up to it was aiming for something more, and this just feels a compromise. It was rewritten. It was maybe something different, and it just doesn't feel like. And they're cutting away to these TV reporters as well, which does not work. So it's that thing is, there's still so much good stuff in here. And Tobey Maguire's really enjoying himself when the scene with Bruce Campbell. You can tell he's really enjoying himself. And the really absurd, geeky stuff he's doing, you can tell the actor's having a lot of fun with it, because he's doing stuff he doesn't normally get to do. And all the actors are game, but it's just like, things are compressed, and you get a sense of everything's compressed, and nothing's really like allowed to breathe. And that's the big problem with the film. But it's still a lot more enjoyable than I remember it being. I'd still happily rewatch it over lots of the modern Marvel films, because it's got a personality. And, it's still fun. It's a hell of a lot better than the Amazing Spider-Man films. I mean, some people, when they came out and said, oh, these are better than the Raimi films, it's like, really, what? They're not even better than Spider-Man 3. So yeah, I'll still defend it, even if no one else will. But the goofiness of these films is just so much fun. The nerdiness of the Peter Parker character, the fun Raimi has with the using the special effect as something, an extension of Spider-Man in the world, and actually doing stuff you can't do normally. Like, he uses special effects the way the good effects directors use them, as like it's expression of the characters, an expression of the world, It's not just cheap shots. There's so many scenes in this film that are just so much fun because Raimi's had a blast. And he said, "This is what you can do with film with these characters. Let's go for it. Let's go crazy with it." Even the third one, which is a bit weaker, you still get that fun at times with Raimi. And even the finale, there's still moments where there's still fun stuff. And the one of the most enjoyable things of films is how much Raimi enjoys torturing Tobey Maguire. Tobey Maguire gets tortured so often in these films. He treats him like Bruce Campbell in Evil Dead films. He really does. And he just tortures the hell of him repeatedly, consistently, especially the second film. He really gets tortured in that one. And it's like, Raimi likes to torture his actors. In the third film, Kirsten Dunst also gets tortured in lots of ways by the plot as well. And it's like, oh, she's getting some Bruce Campbell treatment too. So it's like, yeah, it's very enjoyable, these films. I enjoyed rewatching them. I'm glad I rewatched them. It's been a while. I'll probably rewatch them sooner than before. I think I'd had enough of them for a while, so it was really enjoyable. Though. It was very good to rewatch. So if you haven't watched them, well, rewatch them. They're fun. That's me for now. I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye for now.